Totally a different day. We're not doing this right after Transformers.
For today's minor quibbles, we're going to be talking about 1998 film Croupier, directed by Mike Hodges, starring Clive Owen. Um, so this, I'll just show my cards. Uh, this is my kind of movie. Uh, I loved this movie. I like a movie that's tight, focused, very much into subjectivity of the character. You kind of see the world through the lens of the main character's cynicism. It's got some weird relationship things that are just kind of that are juicy. It's got some juiciness. I like that to it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and a decent twist at the end that it's a little bit forced, but I'm very into this movie, and I've never heard anybody I know ever talk about it. So
Yeah,
I kind of just put it on. I saw it was on Netflix or something, and I was like,
yeah.
I like Clive Owen a lot, and this movie is highly rated, so I'm gonna check it out. And I was very surprised. I was eating my ice cream on the weekend and just enjoying this sort of like pulpy pulpy movie.
Yeah. I I wouldn't call this a banger, but I do like a 90-minute banger, and this is a 90-minute like half banger. Like,
Yeah.
I love it when a movie just comes in at 90 minutes and it's just solid, it's tight. This is one of them. Admittedly, I had to pause the movie about 10 minutes in to look up the definition of croupier because I'd never heard that term before. I was like, what are they talking about? So I'm dumb. Just throw that down on the table. Um, yeah, it was enjoyable. I think it's definitely like a vehicle in a way for Clive Owen to just be like sitting in a room smoking, looking handsome. Like
Oh
that's
yeah.
like
Oh yeah.
it's 75% of this movie. So, if you have a crush on Clive Owen, like you should probably watch this movie because it's Clive Owen at his Clive Oweniest, you know?
Oh
Um,
yeah. I mean, he
yeah,
carries the same vibe through a lot of his films, I would say. He's got the kind of like brutishly handsome, kind of dark,
yes,
handsome quality to him, and
yes.
and
Aloof with
a
an aloofness,
yeah, world weariness to him
yes.
that he does really well. And this is like that concentrate in a
Yes.
certain way.
The world comes to him, basically, in
Yeah.
this movie and in many others. Yeah, it was enjoyable. Um, I probably did not love it the same way that you did. Like, I thought it was entertaining and I was definitely invested, but I feel like there were just that last 20 minutes is just too messy for me, for my taste.
Yeah, I'll give you that.
The whole thing, I mean, spoiler alerts abound. I think we maybe should just
Well, just maybe just a little bit on the premise. I mean, essentially, like Clive Owen, struggling writer,
Mhm.
trying to get a book done or something like that, and he's kind of lives in a going to the subjectivity thing. He lives in a world that's very dog eat dog. It's very his agent is kind of like a kind of a little bit of a jerk, and everybody's a little bit selfish, and the world is a little kind of like a dark and kind of gritty place. And he's just trying to be this writer, and he's basically the live-in boyfriend, the kept man of like a,
Mhm.
a woman, and live in a basement apartment with her, and he's trying to get a novel written. And basically, he's like, well, I'm just going to take a job as a croupier, so I'm just dealing blackjack and whatever at this local casino where the up and up come in, and he kind of
Yes, a job
observes.
gotten by his father's
Oh yeah,
recommendation.
that's right. His father got him the job, basically, or got him the conduit into the job. And he kind of like does that for a bit and sees some seedy behavior, and he observes and kind of smolders and smokes cigarettes and observes some more.
Yeah, he observes a lot in this movie. Yeah, like I said, the world comes to him. This is a good movie for him to just be in a room. The camera's watching him watch the world come to him.
Yes.
Um, which it's not. I don't think it's a bad thing, but I think that is like maybe one of the things that I do have a problem with this movie is that it
Yeah.
just kind of hits this one note for the whole thing, and like
Oh yeah, for
that's
sure.
what it is.
Yeah.
Um, But I'll tell you what I did like before I get into my negativity, which is that's my default. Like I'm a curmudgeon about a lot of things,
Sure.
but I actually liked the interplay between whether like the movie does a really good job of making you kind of wonder: are we watching the novelization that he's writing about, or are we
Mhm.
watching his true life?
Mhm.
The movie. I think it just always rides that line very nicely. And there are even some nice subtle plays image wise that help reinforce that. Like when the cheat finally comes to the casino and he's down on the ground, the shot of him is not of him, it's of him in three different mirrors. So you're
Yeah.
seeing multiple different characters all at once. That last scene when the boss of the casino tells him that he can take like 3 weeks off, it starts on the mirror, and the mirror is all kind of like doing that Wayne's World sort of thing where it's like, are we coming out of the dream, like the novelization, going back to real life, or like
Yeah.
I think that that's interesting. And,
Mhm.
I'm not the kind of person that will try to sit here and try to decide what's what, or if I don't even think that matters. I think the whole point is that the movie's trying to do that and it does it well.
Yeah.
Um, you
Well, I
know,
like, I like a film that is very, I'll agree that this film is very one note, but it's, I think of it, the way I like to think of it is sort of like it's very focused. It's
Mhm.
very, it's not trying to bring you to a bunch of sweeping, interesting, diverse locations. It's like, no, like this is a really, really narrow slice of a really, really narrow specific point of view. And kind of
Mhm.
like, we're just going to stick with that. It's going to be, like you said, it's going to be 90 minutes, very compact, no wasted time, in my opinion,
Yeah.
like no wasted scenes. It's just kind of like, boom, 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 boom,
Yeah.
which I was really into.
Yeah, no, I mean the pace of it is great, and you'll stick through it because it's entertaining. It just is an entertaining movie, and there's no it's always cool to see a world that I don't have that much experience gambling. I've only been to like two casinos in my life. I
Yeah.
put down like $100 and then I lose it and then I get sick of that and I go away. Um, but it's nice to get a slice into that and see it from a point of view that feels like it really understands the world.
Uh-huh.
Which is yeah, that's what this movie does. It's kind of the whole point is to you want to see Clive Owen shuffle the cards like a professional, because
Yeah.
if he wasn't able to do that, then the mystique would entirely go away. It's like you buy him
Yeah.
as somebody who's good at this job.
Yes.
Yeah. I just I can't help it. Like the ending is so murky and so it's just not well done. They kind of fumbled the ball there. Like the whole concept of Marion being dead and like you don't really get the full impression of like exactly how this was orchestrated by the father and exactly what he stood to gain or what she stood to gain or anything outside the fact that like
It's
you know
it's one of those twists that, yeah, I mean, this was probably my least favorite part of the movie, was kind of like that ending 10 minutes. Like I felt like they sort of like, I think that they wanted to end it on a, okay, it's kind of like the film is very, I would not describe it as like a film with a very rapid progression in terms of the stakes or the intensity. It's very much like this is his life. This is what's going on, and and then suddenly then it's like twist, and it's
yeah
kind of they wanted to have some kind of cap to kind of like bring it all together and make it all seem interesting and just a twist, right? But I felt like it felt a little bit kind of like tacked on to me. I mean, maybe they had that idea from the very beginning and they wanted it to be about that, but I just will say that I too was not like super enthused by the twist that like the father had actually been seeing the woman, and that had sort of orchestrated this whole thing so that he could get something out of it. That
yeah
didn't really matter to me as much.
yeah
Yeah.
it's almost like they did it because that last line about it is very tasty. It's like, oh, all this time my dad is still dealing me from the bottom of the deck.
Yeah.
Like it's a great line and it encompasses the whole concept. It ties it in a nice little bow, and it almost feels like, it's like I want this line so bad that
Yeah.
I'm going to jump through ridiculous hoops to get us there,
It's a
whether it takes.
darling. It's a darling.
Yeah, it's a darling. It's a great line, I must admit, and it does almost make it worth it because it's like it's pretty good.
You know,
But
they could have done other things there. They could have made it, they could have used that line, but not necessarily added this kind of a little bit ham-fisted twist to make it happen.
right, yeah,
Um, because it's
um,
again for me, like I'm kind of content. Like I enjoy just like the juiciness. I like this thing of this like, cynical dude, and you've got like these various women who are kind of always leering at him and sort of like
mhm,
coming at him with like
yeah,
different embodiments of different facets of femininity, kind of, and like
yeah.
you get to see the dynamic play out as he kind of just like navigates that.
Yeah, what's I don't know. It's hard to know if this movie is winking about that or if this is literally like the classic case of a writer who's got writer's block, who's like, I'm just gonna make myself the coolest guy who gets all the babes and like, all just works out for me in the end, like I
Yeah.
don't know if this movie is like winking at that from the perspective of the fact that writers, especially male writers, have been doing that for centuries, just like writing
Yeah.
themselves into like being the hero and
Yeah. Although
whatever. I don't,
in this case, he's definitely, this is sort of like, this is the noir version of that trope, I would say, where it's not, he's not the hero, clearly. It's more just the kind of like the brooding, like, the brooding masculinity
Mhm.
is surrounded by sleazy femininity, basically. And like, um,
Yeah,
I
it's
don't know what that trope's called. There's like a similarity to like Don Draper, where he's like not a
right.
great guy, but at the same time he's like very handsome and attractive, and sort of it's like the
Yeah.
women are just magnetized to him all the same.
Yeah, it's I don't know. The character is a bit infallible outside of the fact that he's not great to the people around him. You know what I mean? It's
Sure,
like
sure.
no choice does Clive Owen make in this that's not the right one. It's like straight down to like dyeing his hair dark is like all of those things are just a
Right.
well orchestrated as though he's seen the whole picture before the movie's even over. And it's like I'm just making right choices here all the way to the end. And I find that a little unpalatable personally. Like,
Yeah, well, it's sort of like, I think it depends on how you look at it, because it's not a foregone conclusion in the world they live in that dyeing his hair black is the right choice. It's not a foregone conclusion that being a croupier instead of like, okay, it's like he has an opportunity to either
mhm,
live as a kept man, which is a pretty cozy gig for as long as
yeah,
he wants, just being a writer, which is what he professes to do. So technically, becoming a croupier is like a bad decision, like with the
mhm,
information that we know at that point, right? So I'll take issue with the idea that he's infallible. I think he's making very bad choices all the way through the movie, but it's just more like he ends up kind of looking badass toward the end because
I don't
it's sort
think
of
so. I think there's like the inherent thing with
like
him.
he agrees to
He's,
do the heist. That's a bad choice. Now
but it's
you're
not.
saying it turns out good, but the point is that at that point in the chronology, he doesn't know in advance it's going to turn out good, but it
Yeah,
turns
but I
out
think I'm just gonna have to keep disagreeing with you because he's always talking about odds.
good. Uh-huh.
That's what he's doing. And
Uh-huh.
like the whole point is that he works in a casino where it's all about odds. He doesn't gamble
Yeah.
and he's considering all the odds and he's in control the whole
Yeah.
time because
Hmm.
he's making the choice with the best odds always. And it always hits for him.
Yeah.
So it's like, I'm not gonna say that it like ruins the movie, but it does just leave it in a very weird place where I just kind of have to turn my brain off to all everything except just the aesthetics of it. I love being in that casino with all the mirrors, and I love seeing him dealing cards, and I love seeing like the games happening and the nuance of like the noir of it. Like you mentioned, the woman arrives, and it's kind of intriguing, and
Yeah.
you know all those little steps along the way
Yeah.
are enjoyable. But kind of when I look at it as a whole, I'm just like, did I like this? Or the more I
Yeah.
think about it, maybe I
Well,
did think
this boils down to something that I think, you know, again, I said this is very much like a movie that's made for me. Like every element of it, every like artistic choice they made is something that I like. I like a clever voiceover narrator, even though that's considered a weak point in film, but I just happen to enjoy it.
yeah.
Because it's done very well in this, and like I said, I mentioned I like the brooding characters and stuff like that. But it's kind of like, okay, in certain genres we can expect that there are like certain tropes, so if I'm watching a teen drama, and like, okay, like it's absolutely ridiculous, this would never happen, the fact that this every single one of this group of people dates one another throughout the history of the show, right? We could say that yeah, that's not realistic, that doesn't make sense, it's not whatever, it beggars belief, right? But like, if you step back and you're like, but no, that's what happens in shows like that. And you kind of say, well, this is what happens in, I don't know, it's kind of like saying, I don't know, like I was watching some sports the other day, and all this sports kept happening. People kept like kicking a ball around. It's like, but no, that's the whole point. You see, that's the whole point.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, because if when you start really drilling down into the idea of like, oh, that's just not realistic, that would never happen. It's like, well, yeah, that's why it's a movie, because in this world it did happen. And it's like, if everything went the way it does in normal life, no one would see movies, because who wants to just see that?
Yeah.
And it also lays into the sports analogy. It's like buzzer beaters happen all the time, and every time they're spectacular. And for some reason, every time they're like, you can't even write this. And it's like, that's shit. It's easy to write. It's like the score is tied, and then he makes it. But it's just a little. I don't know. I don't want to just keep repeating myself on the same thing. I just would have liked a cleaner ending. I think if the cleaner ending had happened, or there wouldn't have just been this sort of gymnastics about like her dying, and that really awkward line is like, I was in love with her, from her partner.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. It's like, what were they thinking with this? Like, why did we need to spend that 3 minutes on this plot point?
Yeah.
Especially when two things. One, they could have just had them like drift apart because of the irreconcilable differences and the fact that he cheated on her. Like, they could have just drifted apart, and like that would have been a consequence of that action. Instead, she comes back. And two, I believe they were trying to do this with the movie when he's at home sitting on the floor. He's gotten the call from his dad, and he says the line, and then the woman arrives and you just see her legs, and you're meant to think, is that Marion? I believe, like, because I was like, wait a second, because I don't know if we're in a story or if we're in real life, or if that's what this movie's doing at this point. And then it turns out to be Bella.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, okay, that kind of makes sense, I guess. But it's just so clunky. Like, the whole thing is just like extremely clunky.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll give you that. I'll concede that the ending is clunky, and that they could have ended the film in a much more naturalistic way, without having to try to do like the double backflip, like weird twist ending, sort of, with things kind of tied up in the way they got tied up. But I agree. I think they were motivated by wanting to get to these moments.
This movie was a game of Plinko, where for some reason the Plinko chip went straight through towards the 10,000, and then at the end it goes and ends in like the 3,000.
Wow, that is an amazing analogy. I can't top that. That's actually perfect. I think we should end with that on that analogy.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so my verdict on this is like, I could consider this like a have to see movie. I love this, and flaws aside, I really just enjoyed every moment of the 90 minutes, despite the clunky ending. So you're more middle of the road, though, I guess.
Well, no, here, I mean, this is how it always happens. I pick nits. It's my thing. Even on things that I think that I love. I mean, hyper analyzing something like this is just more fun than just like revering it or hating it. I thought it was enjoyable, and I would actually recommend it to people to watch, because I think it's an enjoyable movie to watch. Very enjoyable. I didn't love it, but I think you absolutely should watch it if you need a little 90-minute half banger.
I love the Plinko analogy. That's so true. It's so true. So painfully true.
So painfully true. Yeah.
All right. Well, this is my Quibbles. I have one that I think we're going to do next, or I think we should do next, but I don't want to lock you into that.
No, let's hear it. What is it?
I think we should watch Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf next.
Oh, from the AFI list. Oh, sweet. Let's do it.
Well, coming soon. Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf?
Sweet.
All right. Bye.